Thor versus Jörmungandr The Final Battle. The waiting was over. For ages, Jörmungandr had remained beneath the ocean. Thor had carried the memory of their encounters. The gods had known the prophecy. And then, the final winter arrived. The world began to break. The seas rose, the heavens darkened, and from beneath the waves, the world serpent finally emerged. This time, there would be no escape, no broken fishing line, no magical disguise, no distant ocean separating the enemies. Thor and Jörmungandr were about to meet for the final time. The world begins to shake. The signs of Ragnarok appeared everywhere. The Fimbulwinter covered Midgard. Snow and ice spread across the earth. Human civilization began collapsing. Then, the earth shook. Mountains trembled. The boundaries between the worlds began to weaken. The great wolf Fenrir broke free. Loki escaped his punishment. The forces of the giants gathered, and beneath the ocean, something moved. At first, it was only a disturbance. Then the waves grew higher, higher, and higher, until the sea seemed to rise toward the heavens. Jörmungandr was awakening. The serpent rises. The world serpent released its tail. For ages, its body had encircled Midgard. Now the circle was broken. Jörmungandr rose from the ocean. Its enormous body crashed through the waves. Water flooded the land. Ships were destroyed. Coastlines disappeared. The serpent's movements created enormous waves, and wherever it moved, poison followed. The world itself seemed unable to contain the creature. The gods watched. They knew what this meant. Ragnarok had arrived. Thor sees his enemy among the armies of the gods. Thor stood ready. Mjolnir was in his hand. His armor was prepared. His eyes were fixed upon the monster rising from the sea. He had encountered Jörmungandr before. He had nearly lifted the serpent disguised as a cat. He had once pulled the creature from the ocean. But those encounters had never been completed. This one would be different. Thor knew the prophecy. He knew he would kill Jörmungandr, and he knew the serpent would kill him. Yet Thor did not retreat. He stepped forward. The serpent attacks Jörmungandr opened its jaws. Venom poured into the air. The serpent struck. Thor raised his shield. The impact sent him backward. The ground cracked beneath his feet. Thor recovered. Then he swung Mjolnir. The hammer struck the serpent's skull. Thunder exploded across the battlefield. Jörmungandr screamed. Its body twisted across the earth. Its tail smashed rocks and trees. But the creature refused to fall. It attacked again. Thor struck again. The battle became a storm of thunder and poison. Mjolnir against the world serpent. Thor had fought giants. He had fought armies. But Jörmungandr was different. The serpent was enormous. Its body stretched farther than the eye could follow. Every movement created destruction. Every breath carried poison. Yet Thor continued. He raised Mjolnir again and again. Each blow landed with the force of a storm. The serpent's scales cracked, its blood poured across the earth. The monster began to weaken, but Thor was weakening too. The poison had entered his body. Still, he refused to stop. The final blow, Jörmungandr lifted its enormous head. Its jaws opened. Thor raised Mjolnir one final time. Then, he struck. The hammer crashed into the serpent. The world serpent collapsed. Its enormous body fell across the battlefield. The earth shook beneath its weight. The ocean roared. Then, silence. Jörmungandr was dead. The monster that had surrounded Midgard had finally been defeated. Thor had won, but the victory was already costing him his life. The 9 steps. Thor stood beside the dead serpent. He had survived, at least for a moment. He looked across the battlefield. Then, he took 1 step, another, and another. The poison was spreading. He continued walking. 4 steps, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Then, the god of thunder fell. Jörmungandr was dead, but its venom had accomplished what its enormous body could not. Thor had died. The prophecy had been fulfilled. Why Thor's death matters. Thor's death is one of the most tragic moments in Norse mythology. Because Thor won, he killed his enemy, he fulfilled his duty, he proved himself stronger than the serpent, and yet he could not escape the price. This is one of the central ideas of Ragnarok. Victory does not always mean survival. Sometimes you can win the battle and still lose everything. Thor knew his fate, but he fought anyway. That courage is part of why Thor remained one of the most beloved gods of the North. The death of the world serpent. Jörmungandr's death also carried enormous meaning. The creature had represented a force surrounding the human world. It had lived beneath the ocean. It had waited beyond human reach. It had represented the unknown. At Ragnarok, that unknown finally emerged, and Thor confronted it. The serpent's death meant that one of the greatest forces of chaos had been destroyed, but its death was part of something much larger. The old world was ending, and almost immediately, fire began consuming what remained. Surtur arrives. From the realm of fire came Surtur, a giant carrying a blazing sword. Flames followed his every step. The sky burned. The earth burned. The realms were consumed. Jörmungandr's poison, Thor's death, Odin's fall, Fenrir's destruction. All of it was part of the same catastrophe. Ragnarok was not simply a war. It was the collapse of the old cosmic order. The gods had fallen. The monsters had fallen. And now the world itself was falling. But the story was not over. The Norse myths do not end with darkness. After the destruction, something strange happens. The sea withdraws, the earth rises again, the world becomes green, life returns, the sun appears once more. Some gods survive, and humanity survives as well. Two humans, Leif and Leifthresir, emerge from hiding. They begin the human race again. The old world is gone, but a new world remains, and in that new world, the story of Jörmungandr becomes a memory, the meaning of the world serpent. Jörmungandr was not simply a giant snake. He represented the terrifying power of nature. The sea could give life, but the sea could also destroy. The Vikings lived beside it. They crossed it. They depended upon it. They feared it. So they imagined something enormous beneath the waves, something so powerful that it could surround the world itself. The world serpent gave form to that fear, and its final battle with Thor turned that fear into one of mythology's greatest confrontations. The serpent and the god look closely at the story, and something becomes clear. Thor and Jörmungandr were connected. Neither could completely escape the other. Every encounter brought them closer. The cat, the fishing expedition, and finally, Ragnarok. Their relationship was almost like a prophecy in motion. The god needed the monster. The monster needed the god. Their stories could not be separated, and when one finally died, the other died too. The final image of Jörmungandr. Imagine the ocean after the battle. The waves are slowly becoming calm. The enormous body of Jörmungandr lies motionless. The serpent that once surrounded Midgard is gone. Nearby, Thor lies dead. His hammer rests upon the earth. The sky burns in the distance. But beyond the flames, a new world is beginning. Green fields will return. The surviving gods will walk again. Humanity will begin again. And the story of the world serpent will pass into legend. The legacy of Jörmungandr, centuries later. People would still tell the story, the giant serpent beneath the ocean, the god with the hammer, the final battle, the poison, the 9 steps, the death of both enemies. Jörmungandr became one of the most recognizable creatures in Norse mythology, not because he was simply enormous, but because his story connected everything: Loki, Thor, the sea, Ragnarok, and the fate of the world. He was born as a child, thrown into the ocean, grew beyond imagination, and eventually became the serpent of the world. Final outro. The Vikings did not imagine the end of the world as a peaceful event. They imagined fire, floods, monsters, gods dying, the heavens collapsing, but they also imagined something else: renewal. After destruction, life returns. After darkness, light returns. After death, a new world rises. And perhaps that is why Jörmungandr's story remains so powerful. The world serpent was enormous, terrifying, almost impossible to defeat, but even the greatest monster had an ending, and even after that ending, the world continued. From Fafnir to Fenrir to Jörmungandr, the creatures of Norse mythology continue to tell the same ancient lesson. Nothing lasts forever. Not monsters, not gods, not worlds, but stories can survive them all.